Recording will start soon. Recording is activated. There we are. All right, sweet.
There we go.
Beautiful. How are you this morning, bro?
Everything's smooth. How we feeling?
Not bad at all. I've learned how to hypercharge all of my content creation, so now I can make 10 to 20 videos a day for social media. And Facebook basically is like heavy on their algorithm right now because don't nobody use it. So they push your content to mad people. So I'm making a ton of content and putting it to Facebook and then like scheduling it. So I have an entire month's worth of content scheduled on Facebook. I did that yesterday.
Interesting. Okay. All bars. You just started out with, with mic drop already. I did not know this about Facebook. That's what's up.
Yeah, Gary Vee is literally his job to understand how algorithms and platforms work. So like he has all the gems on what to do in terms of digital marketing and stuff.
I see. Okay. Good to know. I've definitely heard his name before, so I guess I got to do a deep dive.
Yeah, he's a dope dude. Today, would you rather talk about you, your experience, your organization, or your mission?
Oh, those are all good ones. I'm never going to pick myself. Let's say experience.
Okay. Um, what called you to begin your path of self-development?
Ooh, I like this. Okay. What began my path to self-development? So there was a good few years back that I was working in a restaurant, and it kind of sounds like it's left field, but basically, I'd made a bet with my brother. We worked in the same restaurant, and I was like, man, I'm not gonna eat meat for like a whole day, man. Watch it and watch how good my food is still gonna be. And like we were just like cooking food, trying to like limit ourselves, but see if we could still chef it up. And long story short, by the time I tried to go back and eat meat the next day, like I got super sick, like super sick, super sick. It was like one of the worst sicknesses ever. And then again, I tried it in a couple days, got super sick again. So basically, I was an accidental vegetarian. Like I had never meant for it to happen. It just like as soon as I cut it out for that 1 or 2 days, like it kind of made me it kind of made my body adjust. And then from then on, like I was just kind of trying to teach myself meditation in the traditional sense, the sitting still. And like, well, if I'm not eating meat, like I should be able to get deeper to my meditation, right? Like, so it was a combination of conscious eating and meditation is what really started it. I wanted to understand how to calm down my mind for real and have that kind of control.
In your meditation, do you experience like nothingness or do you experience like a dream state?
I think naturally, I'm a daydreamer already. So yeah, when I meditate, my natural propensity is to be in a dream state. But I think my goal is nothingness. That's what I try to get to. That's a good question too.
I try.
More than try, execute it.
Yes, the reason I ask is because intent is at the root of accomplishment, and meditation can be an interesting process because it can be the act of trying not to try, and that's how you apply it. But there are all these different types of meditations. You can meditate with different intents. So when you do like what some people call the Mushin meditation or the empty mind meditation, it can serve as a place of reflection, but because there's like no thought there, the reflection can sometimes come in like a wave that just hits you after the meditation is over. Have you experienced that?
Oh, for sure. I didn't know that that's what that was, but yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that's kind of how a lot of any idea I come across, I feel like comes across to me in a certain time of day. And I feel like that's probably because I meditate at a certain time of day. So yeah, you just explained a lot. Just poof.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that exists in the world. And like what made you want to shift from developing yourself to being able to integrate your development with other people?
Ooh, man, yeah. Okay, so I feel like shortly after or it may, it's been so long, maybe these things kind of happened around the same time, but it was kind of three major points between the eating clean, the meditation, and then I started studying astrology a lot. And so, my intention in studying astrology was to like understand how elements maneuver, so that when I was meditating, I understood, like, again, I could attach a deeper intention to whatever it was that I was focused on. And so once I felt like I had kind of done a deep enough dive, because I think, I probably did this for a good couple years. And, obviously at this point, my life is completely changed. I'm a completely different person, So at that point was when I was like, oh, I think people need this. Like, and not even to say that I thought I knew something that people needed. I just felt like I did almost as much as I could with myself that I could at that time to field test my experiences. So I was like, I need to plug in with a community to see if, like, what I found valuable in these three categories is just as valuable to them. So I was like, what better place to try than, going around and seeing if other martial artists feel this way, type of thing. So that felt like a natural progression.
Which martial arts did you start with in this endeavor?
Actually, my very first martial art was boxing. Um, and that was just something done in a very non-traditional, informal route. I just had another homie that I worked with. He was from New York. He just was that dude that always had gloves in his car, and he just kind of, made us throw on the gloves, and we made that a regular thing. So boxing was my very first.
And did you engage with like communities of boxers in that time?
Honestly, this was more like a group of the friends. Like, we didn't actually go to like any boxing gyms at the time. Like, we were more so, hey, Friday night after work, everybody show up at the house and bring your gloves. Like, that was our thing. So, we had fun with it. We were consistent with it for about a year or so. We probably got to where there was on average 10 of us meeting up. So, we were definitely like invested at the time. We were having fun with it.
Nice. What came after boxing?
So after boxing is when I fell in love with capoeira. That's the main baby, you know what I'm saying? That's wifey. Um, I feel like boxing definitely, you know, set me up for having to understand what it's like to go through intense cardio. So coming into capoeira, I was like, oh, this is everything that I was trying to do by myself. Like, I was over here trying to do meditation by myself and teach myself yoga and eat clean and, work on my balance and handstands. Oh, they're already doing all that, and it's fluid. So capoeira came after boxing, and it kind of completed the field study at that moment.
That's beautiful. Do you remember what your first like mind-blowing experience was practicing capoeira for the first time?
Hmm. My first mind blowing experience. I would say my first mind blowing experience was probably like our first bachizado or graduation type event. Because up until then, I felt like, martial arts had a very not cookie cutter. What's the word? It had a very matter of fact, formal way for us to celebrate our events and everything. And so when I went to my first capoeira bachizado or graduation, I was mind blown by the amount of people that came from other countries. Because I was just like, whoa! Like, I knew that, I was of course training an African and Brazilian art, but I just didn't know how much people cared about it. So it blew my mind that people would show up a week ahead of time, sometimes 2 weeks ahead of time, not really have any intention of making money and train all day, like for 2 straight weeks. You know what I'm saying? And then just not only are they training for 2 straight weeks, but then they get done with training at midnight and folks are going out, drinking, hanging out, dancing, doing samba, partying, waking up early and training the next day. So I think that was really kind of like the mind blowing experience where I was like firstly immersed in the culture. Like, wow, I didn't know that there was this mental fortitude that people had to where they could train all day, party all day, wake up and act like that didn't happen.
Wow. I have not experienced that yet. That
Yeah.
sounds wild. It's really cool to come back home and see the breadth, breadth, that
Right.
exists in in the capoeira community in Atlanta. And uh, do you know like where that came from or why it is the way that it is there?
Wait, clarify for me. Do I know why? Which part?
Do you know like why the capoeira community in Atlanta is like so strong?
Oh, okay. Wow. That's a good question. I'm gonna have to be transparent and say my first initial answer is no, but I would stab at it and say that I feel like Atlanta has always had a hub for intrinsic arts. You know, forever. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever like progressive movement that was going on. You know, if it wasn't the West Coast and it wasn't New York, okay, well then it had to be happening in Atlanta, right? So I feel like from what I've understood is, you know, like the 20, 30 years ago, early 90s, you know, we had a lot of the our brothers in the Angoletto community. They were already kind of carrying that torch because they were involved in a bunch of arts. These people are already involved in agriculture. They were already involved in working with copper and crystals. You know, they're already involved with all the things that we see on the spiritual movement. So I feel like once Capoeira reached, they gravitated towards it. They knew same thing like I was saying, like this is everything I needed in one system. So early 90s, we already had a solid core group of people that were cemented in their community that took up Capoeira and took it seriously. And that allowed for other Brazilian mestres to come here and have like an audience already. Of course, this is debatable. You know, I wasn't there for this all, you know, disclaimer, but that is what I've seen in my experience. I feel like there was a lot of people that already had a lot of cross pollination going on. They found Capoeira to complete the formula. They carried the torch, and then bam, now you can bring people that are from the homeland, and then it allows everybody to expand.
How did your practice and experience with capoeira, both in and outside of the Hada, impact the way that you approach cross training and all of the other disciplines that you operate
Mm. Oh, like this one. Okay, so Capoeira to me, there's just like a lot of little things that we do to each other just to make sure people stay sharp, you know. So that way the in and outside of the Hoda thing translates. Like little things, like if you drop your keys and try to pick them up, somebody's gonna try to kick you in the face. Like somebody is going to try to run up on you if they see you drop something and pick it up. So like a capoeirista knows, like if you drop something and you go to pick it up, you have to scan, you have to like guard your face, something like something. Um, Another one, like they'll say that like, you know, you don't walk under low hanging trees. You just, because we used to do that, you know, we guerrilla warfare type tactics, like so we know like I'm not really gonna walk under that, like somebody could, you know. So there's always like these little games we played with each other to kind of like make sure that that's sharpened or stay sharp rather. So that being said, I feel like there's like this rawness and like this a street culture, the capoeira, that kind of forces you to have that awareness of the outside. And so when you are dealing with street culture and you're dealing with a street defense based system like capoeira originally was, you had to understand the pretext that whoever you were running into could have been outmanning you, outgunning you, or could have been out trained, you know, or he could have just trained more arts than you. So that in and of itself, Competista doesn't really underestimate anybody. They try to use their skill set against them. So when it came to cross training, I feel like Capoeira had already embedded a certain perspective of how to think outside the box in a short answer.
Hmm. How was your experience when you actually like went to Brazil? And have you only been in Brazil that one time, or have you been like multiple times?
Just one time. He said, how was my experience? Oh man, very gratifying, very affirming and confirming. Like, you know, there's no way that you study something for a bunch of years and then go to the homeland and not feel like you just completed a huge mission. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it was just everything that I said about my initial immersion. Like my first capoeira batizado was that times exponentials, times 10, times 100, whatever, you know what I mean? Because it's very much the same thing. Like, but it was also like I really got to see how people took care of each other without the excuse of work getting in the way, or without the excuse of like, oh, I mean, I just didn't have the money. Like, people don't think like that. Like, they make it happen, So like, before I even landed, multiple people were reaching out to me to kind of thing to make sure, I had a ride, um, that I had a place to stay. Like, just the level of community is like, it's they make you feel like you're the president. But like, it's a thing that and that's my own perspective on it. But that's something that I've noticed anytime we do have these events or people do travel. So like when I went home, well, I say home, when I went to Brazil, I felt like they rolled out the red carpet for me. Like, every day, everybody was inviting me to stay at their house. Like, oh, do you got a place to stay? Like, yeah, I already paid for Airbnb, unfortunately, so I am gonna use it. But like, dang, like, now I know. Like, so yeah, it was super, super welcoming. There's already, like, within 2 or 3 days, it was like 3 people that I was calling like my brother, but I actually felt that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like I knew these people forever. So yeah, man, Brazil was an amazing experience. It's always going to be something that we need to do more often.
Yeah, in engaging with more sustainable communities, my perception of sustainability has been changed greatly because being
Mm.
raised around a lot of Pan-African communities, my initial conception of sustainability was like you get your money, you have your own bank, you have your own church, and then you kind of close off from the outside world like Wakanda, and it's y'all just only doing stuff with each other. But as time has passed, I've realized that like fiat is cool and fiat is definitely important for like not dying, especially in a capitalist society.
Right.
But I've learned, especially growing up more and having certain bills and obligations and stuff, that a lot of people will make their lives more expensive and more difficult to get out of having to feel reliant on people because they don't want to like feel disappointed or let people down as
Mm.
a counterbalance. And when you engage in a manner that is socially sustainable, where you know people that have access to certain things and you can use the things they don't want and they can use the stuff that you don't want, your existence becomes far less expensive and far more convenient in a very interesting way.
Man, yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate how you condensed that for me. So I guess, yeah, that was what I was trying to articulate with sustainability. Like, yeah, there's sustainability that's just super evident, super prevalent. Like, for instance, I remember like during the beginning of our event, like, um, one of the higher level capoeiristas, she came out with a whole cooler and she was selling everybody juices, but it wasn't like overthought. It wasn't like, it just seemed so natural to them. It was like, duh, of course somebody's gonna come here and sell juices. The event ended and she brought out sandwiches, and it was like, oh, like, why aren't we thinking about like how to feed ourselves? You know what I'm saying? Like, we know we're about to be training all day. Like, why aren't we designating this over here? Like, we're overthinking, over planning. Like, just somebody needs to just do it, just execute. So yeah, that sustainability word, I love that. That was very highly appreciated.
Indeed, and I feel that y'all are doing it, and y'all, engaging with y'all actually changed my entire methodology of traveling and collecting information, learning different things and different stories and stuff. Because initially, just like visiting your group and then learning about the connection between the different groups in Atlanta was in itself fascinating. That you all have these like connected histories and these lineages that go like across different countries and different lines. And although y'all are like in different places, y'all know each other and y'all engage in the manners that are conducive to the ways that you want to exist. And then y'all meet with each other in the intersection of your desires so that there's like minimum so that there is less conflict than there could be in other cases, which is really, really,
Mm.
really cool to me. In addition to that, when let's see if I remember this man's name. Uh, I don't remember his name. The mestre that moved to Texas. Who's he?
Oh, hell.
Okay, cool. Mestre Hayao. I don't remember oh, that's what it was. There's an Angelero that I met in Philly because there's a restaurant up in Philly that's like a vegan restaurant operated by a Pan African community, and they brought capoeira to Philly in like the 80s, and then they had to like stop doing stuff for a little bit to get certain things together, and then they basically did this big renovation and they brought it back. And so I was just chilling in a restaurant and I saw a dude that looked like a capoeirista. And I don't know how I just like, excuse me, sir, like, do you train? And he was like, yeah, I'm about to teach the capoeira class. I was like, really now? And so I joined his class and he was like, you from Atlanta? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, find Kamal and tell him that Oman sent you. I was like, cool. And that's exactly what I did. And then all of y'all happened to be there, and this mesh I was moving happened to be there, and all of it, like it was interesting. And then also watching how like I'm used to seeing y'all like do these like crazy moves and like this crazy tricky stuff and jumping all over the place. So like seeing all of y'all just like authentically represent yourself, but at the same time, like articulate yourself in the Angola style. And in the Angola, it's more of like a tradition or a practice than even like a martial style, was just like really fascinating to me. And it made me realize that if you can articulate yourself in in other traditions or in traditions that you're normally not seen in, then like building up your expression should be the skill as opposed to like building up your move set basically.
Man, first off, thank you for even saying that we helped you in that way. And second off, you have a crazy eye for detail. For you to pick that up, man, like in this kind of depth and detail, like that's impressive, man. Really, like, you know.
Thank you, bro. Because there's a show called Fight Quest there's a show called Human Weapon that I used to watch when I was really young about these dudes that like travel the world and learn all the martial arts. And I was like, I want to do that. Then there was a show called Fight Quest, and the same thing happened. I was like, I really want to do that. And then there was a manga called Kenichi where this kid like basically learned all the martial arts, and I was like, I'm going to do exactly that. And as I started traveling and stuff, at first it was cool because like I get to learn all this cool stuff, but this weird stuff started happening a couple years later where I realized like I can do a bunch of stuff, but like the senior students are still whipping me. How are they whipping me when I've collected all this information? And over time, I realized it was because my relationship with the material was not strong because I was developing a quantity of techniques instead of developing like an authentic relationship with the technique and understanding how, as Miyamoto Musashi says, like one thing can come from 10,000 things and 10,000 things can come from one thing. And the beautiful thing about capoeira and its practice, which is easiest to see, I feel, in capoeira, even though it extends to like other martial arts and other practices and stuff, is that you can literally play an entire game with one move and based on the way that you choose to express yourself. And you can express yourself completely without throwing any attacks and just doing defense, or just by like moving. You could literally have your hands shackled, you could have one leg, and you still be able to express yourself if you build up that ability to express yourself. And then even better, you can express yourself in a martial context and communicate without saying anything because the entire atmosphere is an atmosphere of like expression and connection, which I think is really special.
Agreed. Agreed. I've been saying it for a minute. Like, everything that comes from like the Afro context is always highly utilitarian. Like we pack everything we can into one system, no matter what we do. So yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment. It's one of the few arts that I've seen where it's just like, yeah, I know everybody else may not see it, but you can definitely incorporate any other style here and make it work. Plain and
Yeah.
simple.
After like years of capoeira, what made you want to start like expanding your ability into other arts and practices?
So a lot of my desire honestly came from once I took the path of teaching. Once I was like, okay, like I'm teaching this art, I'm really big on like understanding whoever's training with me, like why they want to train and what they're motivated on outside of life. If I don't understand that, then I don't really feel like I'm equipped to teach you or share with you, rather. I don't really like to say teach, share with you. And so once I decided to do that, I started noticing how many people were saying, I want to do this for self-defense. I was like, okay. So the vast majority of the people that I at least survey or interact with, train with, they're all saying self-defense is why they want to learn this martial art. And then, of course, what do you do when you get pieces of data? You have to dissect it down to its most distilled form, and then you have to blow it out. So I'm just doing the typical, let me just research these words just to see what pops up and do the definition. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize self-defense was considered a completely different realm than martial arts was. Then in between that, we have combat sports. And I was like, oh shit, that means we have a big problem here, because that means the audience is coming to a platform looking for a different solution than what's being provided. And the issue becomes compounded because you don't find out, like myself, until years later. So, and again, of course, if you have amazing teachers that are always cross training, you won't have this problem. But if and again, I very much encourage people, yes, you do need to deep dive into one art and get that foundation. But yeah, like, I think once I realized that most of the public wants to be able to defend themselves, but the criteria for teaching self-defense is completely different than traditional martial arts or combat sport. It's a completely different thing, because now we have to start incorporating the environment, and we have to start incorporating the brain and the body and how it reacts to stress. So my reason for cross training was basically to make sure that whatever I shared as techniques worked across all three of these platforms. If I go to a traditional martial arts platform, if I go to a combat sports platform, or if I go to a self-defense arena, or I actually have to defend myself, whatever it is, do these techniques work in all three of these formats? Because that's where I feel people fall short when they have not field tested and cross trained. So basically, to bring the answer together, I wanted to make sure I was teaching effective things.
Yeah, and thank you for wording it like that, because you're absolutely right. Combat sports, self-defense, and martial arts often are different things with different intentions at the root of them. And a lot of people not understanding that difference ascribe different values to different practices, and then wonder why they're not getting to the place that they want to get to. So understanding those three languages and being able to translate between them makes that process easier, and also makes it more palatable for the consumer that might not understand how different the processes are. And within that, I wanted to, it seems like in self-defense, that instead of the foundation being like physical conditioning and cardiovascular conditioning and the ability to memorize like katas and stuff, it seems like the foundation of self-defense is more internal, built on like building like confidence and situational awareness and stuff like that. What would you think the foundations are for like self-defense, combat sports, and martial arts?
I'd like the differences in the foundations.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. So for me, like the self defense, you kind of nailed it when you said situational awareness. Self defense to me is the epitome of situational awareness, and it's having a couple tools that work. It's not complicated. Situational awareness. These couple tools work. I'm throwing this elbow because this elbow is really strong, whatever the case may be. So situational awareness and effectiveness to me is that self-defense arena. Combat sports to me is more so I am proving that my mix of martial arts skills against his mix of martial arts skills is more efficient. So we are still talking about efficiency, but now we're comparing two sets of martial artists. So it's more equally yoked, because now, of course, we're talking combat sports. So we're saying these people are going to be in the same weight class, versus in self-defense. That's not the case. I might be really small. They might be really big. I might have to kick them in the balls. Who knows? So there's ethics in the combat sports that will not exist in the street defense, because in street, I'm surviving. Combat sports, I'm showing technical prowess. And I feel like when we go to martial arts, the last of the three definitions, we're more so talking about a foundation of movement for the body, but we're also talking about what I take the most out of martial arts is philosophy. because that is what is absent in the other two. Is when you come to a street defense, it's elbows, hit, poke on the eyeballs, get out the situation. You know what I'm saying? You go to combat sports, it's elbows, knees. Oh, I'm gonna take him down. I'm gonna armbar, whatever the case may be, and that's where it stops. You know, I tapped him out, so I won, or I gouged him and got away with my perch, so I won. Versus in martial arts, it's like, no, how are you living though? Like, are you practicing what you preach? Are you a martial artist through and through? Like, what's your home life like? How you and your wife, or you and your husband, like your significant other, whatever the case may be. So I feel like martial arts requires a deeper curriculum, and it of course requires a lot more time. So I think it's almost a gradient, and that's kind of why I tried to speak of them in that way. I think we're dealing with a gradient scale.
I would agree completely. Do you feel that in the modern era, media is helping the practice of martial culture to aid people's self-development? Or do you feel like it's hindering them and confusing them a little bit?
Ah, definitely the latter. When you said the first question, I was like, my answer is hell no, they're not helping. Honestly, the reason I say that is because, and this is something we can, like, anybody can take 5 seconds to Google, like, or YouTube, whatever, is that a lot of people are asking the question, who's the next action hero? And that in and of itself, that question existing shows that there's no progress and it's not helping, because 10 or 20 years ago, we all had a name. We could name somebody. It'd be like Jackie Chan. Duh, what do you mean? Jet Li. Duh, what do you mean? Like, whatever the case may be. Bruce Lee. Duh, what do you mean? Like, there was these pinnacle times in certain decades where you would be asinine not to be mentioning these names in reference. Like, you would have asked this question, I'd be like, duh, of course, Bruce Lee. Like, yeah, he's going out field testing everything. He's talking about JKD, take what you need and move like water. Like, sports martial arts is being helped right now. We don't have a face. So if we don't have a face, that means we don't have a culture. And if we don't have a culture, that means we don't have a system that we're valuing. We don't have or a system of values, rather. That might sound the same, but it's a little different. We don't have a value system. So I think that basically, it's in terms of like our media, we've been stuck with, and people, I don't mean to sound like this is a negative thing, but we've been stuck with a certain region for a very long time. And it's no disrespect to that, but we've been fed Eastern Asian martial arts for our entirety of our life. And I think that causes a detriment because we don't understand everybody's contribution. And then once you understand everybody's contribution, then again, we start to come back to that, like, okay, being a well-rounded martial artist. So I think that, we can do a little bit better job about exploring. I mean, because Capoeira is not the only indigenous art, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that are underdocumented, but we know about them. You don't hear people talking about Sanda or Sambo or, Kalindi. Like, there's just so many, like, things that are just offshoots. So yeah, I think that we have a lot to explore, and the fact that we haven't explored it shows that we're not helping the martial arts culture, not in this current time.
What do you think could be done to aid in that pursuit? Because we live in a time where, in theory, there are more college graduates than ever. In theory, people are making more bread than possible and than ever. In theory, we have the best technology to create media and the most access to platforms to export that media. So what do you think the missing ingredient is?
Man, I think it's a merging of times where the people that have dedicated enough time into martial arts to be authorized to speak and demonstrate have to come to terms with a level of commercialization. And I think that's where the issue comes, because if we wait for Hollywood to explore all these different movies, we're going to be waiting decades. So then it boils down to, okay, well, we know that social media runs the world now, and we know that social influencers can be as big as politicians. So that being said, those of us that have decades in the art, like, we have to do our part to kind of decide where we want to go into the exposure part. Like, do you want to make fight scenes with other martial arts to promote both his and your art, or do you want to do scientific research on the effects of your martial art on the human body and its anatomy? Like, I think that we have to, whoever decides to teach has to take up a little more fire behind either the research or the exposure, whatever it may be. But we have to come to terms with utilizing technology more in our martial arts as teachers, is what I'm trying to say.
I would agree. Are there any people you think are blazing that trail?
Um, yeah, I think that there's actually a lot of people that are bubbling. We see. Of course, I have to like give mention to like Lateef Crowder. Everybody knows like who Lateef Crowder is, or Marcus Aurelio. He's been getting a lot of knockouts, doing the Meluji Compasso and stuff like that. So there are people that are trending, and what I see that these people do and that have as a commonality is that they do stunts. Yeah, right. So it's a great way to cross pollinate and make that segue. It's like, hey, like we know what people are watching, because not everybody wants to be a martial artist. Some people just enjoy it. Some people just want to watch it. Some people want to just be entertained by it. So not reaching that audience is to our detriment. So I think that, yeah, there's definitely people doing it. The issue is that it takes a long time for those people to break out and for the rest of the world to recognize that they've already put in 20 years behind studying the art, 20 years in doing the stunt work, whatever the case may be. So I think it's just it's a mountain that they have to climb. I'm excited to see it. I would say that we need more of it, though. We still need more of it. I don't think a lot of people have decided to take that mantle. I think in a lot of cases, people get that I'm a black belt or I'm a teacher now and I have an academy, then it stops. Like, which is still fantastic. I'm not going to underserve or underplay that. Like, it's great to be transforming lives, by 10 and 20, 30 people at a time, 100 people at a time. That's great. But again, in the grand scheme of things, once you are in that platform, we should be able to see like the bigger picture and say, yeah, there's a way for us to reach another audience and reach a wider audience, and make sure that we put respect on our respective martial arts names. So
Agreed. I think the primary hindrance in the adoption and acceptance of martial arts into the broader culture, number one, is constricting the expression of martial arts to purely physical combat. Because as you know, and as you said, there are entire cultural aspects that come to it, and the majority of people that aren't hyper focused martial artists will be more likely to be attached to culture than they are to like components of expression. And I think when that's shown, we see tremendous success. For example, Ong Bak isn't just Tony Jaa running around beating people up and kneeing people in the face. You get Thai culture, you get the influence of colonization on Thailand, you get the underground aspect in addition to like the overground aspect, and how those two different worlds kind of put him into the middle of something where he ends up basically having his friend, which is his connection to nature and thus his culture, taken away from him, and that he's fighting to protect that throughout the entire movie. And most of the movies he's in are that, in the same way that Ip Man functions the same way. I think the action hero as an archetype is special because they can operate in like the underworld and the overworld, but their rules exist in between. And I think the beautiful thing about Capoeira is that it originated from a secret society basically, and has like a public face, but behind that public face is like an entire world that exists. And I think there's a lot of interesting stories to play with there, number one. But two, from a conceptual standpoint, I think that archetype gives people some space to like figure out what stories can be told. And I think engaging with storytellers in the realm of culture allows us to translate those concepts into productions. But because of that, the primary hindrance towards production, period, is perfectionism. And the practice of any art or tradition for a long period of time can instill a habit or a desire for perfection and execution. And unfortunately, when you're doing something new or doing anything really, having a standard of perfection should never stop you from producing things. And the tricky thing about media is that until you put it out into the world, it hasn't completed it being produced. It's like giving birth to a life form that you have to put it into the world in order to learn from it and engage with it. And it takes a level of, I guess, humility, but also acceptance to be willing to put something that may not be perfect into the world and continue putting things into the world so that certain things can happen. I feel like a lot of people have a lot of great ideas for things they wish to produce, but they don't produce them because they never feel like it's good enough or they want to put the perfect thing out. And realistically, nothing perfect gets released. But the more things that people see, the more people that are inspired and the more people that come and want to support your endeavors and our endeavors. And that's why I want to commend you for being willing to like create media and be a part of media and bring people together and document that creation and that collaboration, because I literally wouldn't have found you without that.
Thank you so much. That's dope. And man, you made a hell of a point because yeah, I think as martial artists, we can definitely be purists because like we'll be like, well, if I release this, it's not only a representation of me and my training, it's a representation of the art. And I don't need other people coming down my throat saying that I did, that I misrepresented or I said this wrong, did this wrong, my technique is off. But what I wanted to say to piggyback that is I think that purist mindset is twofold because Hollywood, once they get involved, also has a certain way that they want to shoot fight scenes. So then it forces us to both be purists because we all know if I'm actually in a street environment, street self-defense, and I need to defend myself, it's not going to look as clean as it does in the movies. There's going to be a little bit, okay, and then it works. Like, but in the movies, it's one, and then two, and then three, and then three people are knocked out without any, you know what I mean? So I think that even what we appreciate as far as the audience, I think that we can, those of us that are, taking these roles on, we can do a lot for the realism and how things are shot. Because if we let them attach to that culture, and then you add that level of the fight scene realism, well, then how we can really demonstrate the art's effectiveness makes more sense. You know what I mean? Because I think there's an old story that they say in Capoeira all the time that and I forget who the gentleman's name is that's in the story, but the capoeirista sitting at a bar and a guy challenged the capoeirista to a fight. So the capoeirista's like, okay, and the guy's like, all right, meet me outside. So the guy turns around, the capoeirista busts his head with a beer bottle as soon as he turns around. It's like that's capoeira. Like, and I think that part is what we're missing out of a lot of martial arts. It's like I'm not gonna sit here and like jingle with you before I fight. Nah. But in the Hollywood context, that's what the audience would want to see. So I think that we can all do our part to create content that is enjoyable, that makes sense. But ultimately is inspirational because that's why we're watching these movies. I don't care who you are, whether you train or not. That martial arts movie inspired you. We know the greatest tool is our mind. So if we're inspired by that martial arts movie and we don't train, but we took a piece of the philosophy and applied it to our job, who's to say like why is that a bad thing? And we never know how many people's progress we're hindering by not releasing this content. So that is the thing that I say to like challenge us that like have that purist mindset when we create content, we don't release it. You never know whose progress you are inhibiting by keeping that away and preventing that light bulb moment for them. So I really appreciate you highlighting that.
Absolutely. Y'all are the forerunners in these spaces, and Atlanta has the highest concentration of people authentically representing the art and the culture and mindset in ways that can be digested by like the modern age. There's you who are introducing like without exploration to you, I would have had to go all the way to Haiti or all the way to Texas maybe 4 times a year in order to be able to experience Haitian machete fencing. but like because of the work that you've done to connect people, I was able to experience it. And in a very ironic turn of events, that happened to lead to being able to experience makulele. And in a very interesting turn of events, the dude that does Haitian machete fencing also does capoeira. It's beautiful when things happen full circle.
Absolutely.
There you are.
Yeah, of course the call came through. But yeah, anyway, that's just like a testament, like you were saying earlier, to that need of the cross training. You know what I'm saying? Like you come across capoeirista, like you never know what they know. Like and when we all start to understand that, like I think the deeper people get in martial arts, they start to understand like even if I think I'm a badass, I never know what this other badass might know that I don't know. So yeah, that's dope. That's dope. And it's even more gratifying when people are exploring parts of their culture that mean something to them generationally. You know what I mean? Like that's just, you can't beat that. You can't beat that. I shaded that.
Absolutely. We got freaking Ricky Melandro out here going to where the people that do Wing Chun and Jeet Kune Do are and showing them the beauty of certain techniques, like and getting views, many views, and working with people in movies and stuff. We got Quilombas Luz making insane events and capturing them and highlighting the roots of where the art comes from is absolutely fantastic. Just seeing the exploration and the maintenance of like authenticity and love and community in the space and how the internet is used to push it forward. But in the same token, the content does not betray the experience. A lot of people can be so concerned with producing content, including myself, that it can get in the way of experiencing it. And I think you guys do a great job of creating experiences and genuine relationships while at the same time sharing just enough with people for them to know that things are happening and being done.
Well said. Yeah, I think again, and this is just harkening back to like why everybody falls in love with capoeira. Like it requires you to do so much that you're going to have a culmination of all these things that you can do, but you can only give so much. You know what I mean? Like as a capoeirista, you're going to be a singer. You're also going to be a drummer. You're also going to be a dancer. Like there's just no ifs, ands, buts about it. Like you're going to have to know all these things, and you're also probably going to have to be a little bit politically savvy. You're not going to have to be involved per se, but at least savvy. Because this art has been persecuted for a long time. So I think that once we can really attach our why to the culture of our art, and I stress the why to the culture of our art, not just the art, then we can all kind of like have a lot better experience, and we can also translate the experience. That is like the one thing that I saw missing when I came to jujitsu. Is I was like, well, you motherfuckers get to learn this in English? Like, hey, hold on. Hold on. All right. So they made this really easy for you guys. I was like, I had to learn. Granted, yeah, I was being taught in simultaneously in Portuguese and English at the same time. But when it came time to facilitate events, I wasn't speaking English. So I'm like, all right, like, cool. So to me, that showed like, man, like there's a level of culture in capoeira that is a prerequisite standard that is not in most other martial arts. They're not forcing you to learn the language, But shout out to folks in judo, like it's a very similar thing. Like you start to learn the language a little bit, you know what I mean? So yeah, I just think that the more we dive into the culture, the more we're affirmed in our own generational explorations. Because you'll find out, like, oh, I love this because my grandpa did this, and like, duh, like you did it. So yeah, man, good stuff.
Indeed, bro. I want to thank you very much for being willing to speak with me and to share. And I want you to know that this content is yours. This is your voice. This is your experience. And so, as this exists, feel free to clip it out and use it for whatever the heck you want. I wish to ask you for one thing, only one
Absolutely.
thing. Okay, the one thing is a story that people don't know from the history of the art or your reflection on your experience that can help people understand the value of like either developing themselves or the value of allowing others to be a part of their self-development process.
Ooh, okay. Damn, that was a deep one. I have to like, but thank you. No, it's good. I say a lot that especially in capoeira, it's a privilege to practice this martial art in the open and post about it and make content over it. There was not always the case. There was not always the time. You know, capoeiristas were persecuted in the craziest of ways. You know, and from chopping off limbs, whatever you can imagine, it happened. Um, so I say that to say that if we consider what all it went through and the fact that it's still here, we almost have a duty and an obligation to transform ourselves, because here we have this art that was preserved orally. You know, we're dealing with, you know, something that came from colonial days where people were not always literate. So these people were risking their lives to pass down an oral tradition, and risking their families and risking their limbs. And you know, you could get in prison for like 5 to 7 years just for playing capoeira at a certain time. So I always say, like, I don't think people, I know people know it was illegal, but I don't think people necessarily ascertain like how much they did not like you practicing this. But at the same time, if we do enough research, we find out that people were from every walk of life hired capoeiristas to solve their problems. If you were a politician, if you were in the mob, if you were a street gang, if you were the military, all these people hired capoeiristas as enforcers when they needed shit done. And so I say that to say there's two parts where we're carrying this oral tradition and we're risking our lives to do so. So we have a duty to carry this on, because too many people have spilled blood over this. And we know that capoeira is such a complete system. It offers you an entire curriculum, and it's mobile. It's not you don't need a whole academy. You know, I always say capoeira is a mobile academy. But then you also have the people that, in a militaristic sense, saw the value and they were like, yo, this works. So what I'm trying to say is if in a social revolution context for the freedom of our people, we have proven capoeira works, and for a militaristic standardization of combat, we see that capoeira works. And for capoeira, I'll say for everybody else, we'll just put martial arts here, because there have been other martial arts that have been illegal, definitely, for sure. Then we are almost doing ourselves a disservice by not practicing martial arts, because not only is everything about your total self going to change, but your friends are going to see that change. Your family's going to see that change. And I don't care out of how many of them say that you shouldn't do it, one of them is going to be inspired to also change their life. And you never know what that impact is. So it's an infectious change. So I think we have a duty to train. Yeah, simply put, I think we have a duty to train.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very, very much for being willing to share. I appreciate and value your existence greatly, and I really do look
Thank
forward
you,
to like seeing y'all again and like engaging with y'all. And like it's always a blessing to be able to like pull up on y'all or see y'all in the wild. It's really dope.
Absolutely, man. From the time we met, we've been rocking hard, dog. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met. It's a pleasure to be on this platform with you. And I just want to say I appreciate you continually inspiring people and being so freaking open-minded, dog. I've never seen somebody just dive into anything and take something from it, apply it, and then like keep it up, regardless of how much they travel. Like, you don't make excuses, man. So just shout out to you for being so resilient, man. It doesn't go unnoticed.
Much love, bro.
Much love, my brother.
All right. See you soon.
Yes, sir. Over and out.
All right. Whew. Whew. Oh, God.